Okay. Well, welcome. We'll do a roll call.
Commissioner Kraft,
Present.
Commissioner Lazar,
Here.
Commissioner Mayer,
Here.
Commissioner Freitas, and Commissioner Benson are absent.
Thank you. I'll stand for a salute to the flag. We had approval of minutes for 5/21 and 6/11 meetings.
I read them, I liked them, I move approval.
Fantastic.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, we'll open up oral communications. This would be your opportunity to speak on anything that is not on our agenda tonight. We'll close oral communications and move on to new public hearings. F1, patent vacation rental.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. Henry Baker for the City of Eureka Planning Department, presenting for your consideration the patent vacation rental minor use permit. Sorry about that. There's the title slide. Here's a bird's eye view of the project location. The property is located at 2935 N Street within the inland portion of the city. Zooming in, the property is located on a 5,700 square foot corner lot on the northeast corner of N and Wood Streets with a residential low density or R1 zone. The applicant is proposing to use a 1,086 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom residence as a vacation rental with no proprietor on site. The fenced backyard will also be available to guests, while the 280 square foot garage will not be available for guest use. Here's a street view of the property from N Street. No exterior modifications will be made to the property or residence as part of the project, with the exception of new dark sky compliant outdoor lighting, which is required as a condition of approval. Per the Eureka Municipal Code, also known as the EMC, section 155.204.020, new vacation rentals with no proprietor on site in the R1 zone require a minor use permit. Per EMC 155.408.090, for minor use permits, a notice of pending action is mailed to property owners within 300 feet of the project site. The notice states that within 15 days of the date the notice is mailed, any person may submit a written request for a public hearing before the Planning Commission and must indicate the reason or reasons the public hearing is requested. If no public hearing is requested by the end of the 15-day period, the director acts on the minor use permit application without a hearing. In this case, the city received a request for public hearing. Concerns indicated availability of parking, parties, and vacation rentals effect on the availability of housing within the city. The full text of the request for hearing is included as attachment 3. The public hearing was scheduled for today, and per 155.408.080, a notice of public hearing was mailed to the property owners. Within the EMC's vacation rental regulations, there are several sections which are relevant to the concerns expressed in the request for public hearing received by planning. Per the code, no on-site parking is required to use a residential use as a vacation rental. The property does have street parking on 2 sides, and a condition of approval has been added reiterating the maximum occupancy requirements of 6 occupants, not including children under 12, which will in turn limit the number of vehicles guests bring. The vacation rental regulations limit the number of events allowed at a vacation rental to 6 per year and requires compliance with the noise nuisance regulations in EMC section 94.02. And as required, an off-site emergency contact will be provided for neighbors to call if disturbances occur. However, as stated in the staff report, in addition to these restrictions, the applicant has elected to disallow parties entirely, enforce quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., not allow smoking, and limit pets to no more than one small to medium-sized dog. Here's an aerial view of the surrounding neighborhood. Within the city, there are currently 89 permitted vacation rentals. Over the last 2 years, total vacation rentals, both permitted and unpermitted, have ranged from 98 to 163, comprising approximately 0.8 to 1% of the city's total housing stock. Of those 89, there are no permitted vacation rentals within 300 feet of the property and 2 within 600 feet. To approve the minor use permit, the Commission must find that the proposed use is consistent with general plan and zoning code and any applicable specific plan or area plan adopted by the City Council. There's that. The site is suitable for the size, design, and operating characteristics of the proposed use. The proposed use will be compatible with existing and planned land uses in the vicinity of the property, and the proposed use will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. Also, that the project is categorically exempt from CEQA under a Class 1 existing facilities exemption. Staff has included 7 conditions of approval for consideration. The first 3 address nonconforming site features as required by Section 155.424.030 of the EMC. Before starting operations, the applicant must provide secured bicycle parking, screening of the waste storage area, and replace outdoor lighting with dark sky compliant fixtures. While the following 4 conditions reiterate vacation rental regulations within the code, the applicant is required to obtain a business license, complete initial inspection, obtain any necessary building permits, and complete any necessary follow-up inspections, remit any transient occupancy tax once operation commences, that's TOT, and lastly, maintain compliance with the maximum occupancy requirement. Based on the analysis in the staff report, staff believes that a minor use permit may be approved with the conditions described in the previous slide. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation to hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution finding the project is exempt from CEQA and conditionally approving the application. I have a suggested motion when you're ready. The applicant and myself are here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
I actually have a question that's not specific to this project, but to a couple things that you brought up. So I recognize that the applicant is disallowing events, but if events were allowed, 6 are allowed per year, up to maximum occupancy, is that the same maximum occupancy as overnight stay?
This is the maximum occupancy for building and fire codes.
All right, that makes sense. I have no other questions.
Well, I wasn't going to ask, but is there a restriction in the code with respect to residential use and the number of parties you can have per year? So conceivably, someone could have an event every single day on a single-family home's backyard.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any regulations like that, except for the loud noises unlawful. So I think that is getting at limiting events. So no loud music after 10 p.m.
Okay.
Okay. Looks like we'll open it up for our public hearing. As a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes. There's a timer on the wall. Please state your name and city of residence just for the record. And the applicant is welcome to go first if they would like.
Hi, I'm Claire Patton, and I am the applicant, and this will only be a part-time vacation rental. I'll be living there part-time as well, so I will be attending very well to my vacation rental. I plan only to have 4 adults allowed. I did apply for the 6, but I will only have 4. And so even if everybody brought their own car, there's parking for four cars, and I will have no parties, and yeah, so anyway, I just thought I'd add that.
Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. If commissioners have questions for you, would you be willing to answer those?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I can't see the Zoom. No one's on Zoom. Okay, thank you.
No one else in the audience wants to speak on the vacation rental permit?
Okay. We did have some comments that we received today as well, and it seems like everyone up here got them and had a chance to read them. So, all right, we'll bring it back to commissioners for motion and discussion.
I don't have a lot to say. I think the letters that we received pointed to concerns that go to the policy on vacation rentals throughout the city. We've been pretty proactive about communicating with the city council about what kind of things tend to come up and what we think policy might ought to be. I think with the current rules, I see no reason not to support this project.
Yeah, I noted, excellent staff report, by the way. I noted in the data that I compiled for our report to the council that there was a vacation rental sort of northeast of this, and I don't think I saw any comments mentioning problems with the rental that was already in the neighborhood. So that to me speaks to the sort of compatibility, the question or speculation concerning compatibility. And there's ample parking. I appreciate the applicant's willingness to restrict beyond what's required under the code with regard to events. And and I work in this neighborhood, so and I had a chance to visit the site before the meeting tonight, and it seems like a good fit. So
I think my only suggestion or maybe amendment to the motion would be if the applicant is willing to agree to 4 adults only, that we add that as part of the motion if we can do that.
Yeah, that could be an additional condition. Did you want to ask the applicant?
Well, she stated during her comment that she would be willing to do it to 4 adults, maximum 4 adults.
Okay. Yeah, we can, when somebody makes the motion, you can add a condition at the end of it to limit.
That would be my only suggestion.
Or I guess it's amend the maximum occupancy condition to limit to 4.
I'm prepared to make a motion. So I move the Planning Commission adopt a resolution finding the project exempt from CEQA and conditionally approving the minor use permit for the patent vacation rental at 2935 N Street, with the only modification being that the condition governing occupancy state that it's restricted to no more than 4 adults.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, we'll move to F2, Leach Multifamily Residential Development.
Henry's going to present again.
Yeah, good evening once again, commissioners. For anyone just joining us, I am Assistant Planner Henry Baker, and I'll be presenting the appeal of the Design Review Committee's decision to deny the Leach Multifamily Residential Development, Design Review, and Administrative Adjustments. Here's a bird's eye view of the project location in the context of city limits. The property is centrally located within the city at 1822 I Street. Zooming in further, we can see the property itself is located between Del Norte Street and 17th Streets. The property is located within the residential high density or R3 zoning district surrounding Eureka High School. The property itself is an 8,050 square foot interior lot that has been vacant since 2016 when a fire destroyed a home there and 3 accessory structures. The property has an alley at its rear, shown here in red. Here are some recent photos of the project location. The photo on top is looking west at the front of the property, and the photo at the bottom is looking southeast at the rear of the property from the alley. The applicant is proposing a 2-story, 7-unit multifamily building with common areas and a rear parking area. The project also includes sidewalk improvements along I Street fronting the property and partial paving of the rear alley behind the property from the north. Oh, excuse me. Got ahead of myself. And the property, northern property line to Del Norte Street, south. It's important to note that as required by Eureka Municipal Code, also known as the EMC, section 155.412.040.g, all projects must be consistent with the general plan, any applicable specific plan or area plan, and applicable objective design policies and regulations prior to being scheduled for design review. Objective design policies and regulations are implemented through the development standards in the zoning code, and I will explain in the next slide how those proposed development conforms with the applicable development standards. The image on top here is a rendering of the building's street-facing facade, and the image on bottom shows the proposed full site layout, including the 142-foot section of the rear alley to be paved. The table on the right shows some of the applicable development standards of the R3 zoning district as they apply to the proposed development. These standards were the topics of concern at the Design Review Committee public hearing. The development's floor area ratio, or FAR, which is defined as the total area of all floors divided by the total lot area, is 0.84, consistent with and less than the maximum FAR of 1.15. The development has a total of 7 units, consistent with the residential density standard, for which the size of this lot allows a maximum of 8 units, not including accessory dwelling units. The development site coverage is 42%, which is consistent with and less than the maximum of 80%. The height of the development is 27 feet, consistent with and less than the standard, which allows up to 35 feet. The development meets the required 5-foot interior side setbacks, consistent with the standard. And the development provides 8 on-site parking spaces, consistent with and more so than the standard, which requires a minimum of 7, 1 per unit, not counting available reductions. The project requires design review, which is required for all new primary buildings with 4 or more. Thank you. Required for all new primary buildings with 4 or more dwelling units. The required findings for design review approval are considered subjective. And the project also requires 2 administrative adjustments to deviate from the building entry standard and the vision clearance area, also known as the VCA, standards. I'll discuss these requested deviations in more detail within the presentation. In addition to subjective design review process, the zoning code includes objective design standards. As mentioned, city staff reviews projects for consistency with all objective design standards, also known as the mandatory development standards, prior to scheduling the project for design review at a noticed public hearing. The building's street-facing frontage, shown here, meets all of the objective design standards in EMC section 155.312, with the exception of the building entry standard, which is addressed through administrative adjustment. Among other standards, the design standards in the EMC section 155.312 requires building facades to incorporate at least 2 of the 15 architectural features listed in EMC section 155.312.050. The project facade of the development incorporates 4, which are roof form variation on 75% of the facade, shaded green here, where 25% is the standard. Horizontal articulation on 50% of the facade, where 25% is the standard. Balconies on 25% of the linear length of the facade, where 25% is the standard. Or 20% is the standard. And window trim on 100% of the windows, where 75% is the standard. Moving on to the administrative adjustments, starting with the building entries. EMC section 155.312.040 requires that if a building has multiple entries, all ground floor units facing the street must also have entries that face that street. As you can see on the left here, the entries for units A and B do not face the street and instead face a shared covered entryway. However, a development may be exempted from this requirement through administrative adjustment if the street-facing building facade, while incorporates more architectural features than required, as shown on the previous slide, only 2 were required, and the design incorporates 4, and the exception allows for a clearly superior project to that which would be achieved while complying with the requirement. The detailed analysis is included within the original staff report for Design Review Committee, that is attachment 2 of the packet, but in brief, staff agrees with the applicant that the entrance design is consistent with the character of the neighborhood because the single street-facing entry resembles the other multifamily buildings in the area. Moving on to the rear alley, EMC section 155.308.040 requires a 5-foot vision clearance triangle, or 2 5-foot vision clearance triangles at the intersection of the driveways and alleys, shown here in red. Per the code, no object higher than 3 feet may occupy these spaces, unless exempted through administrative adjustment, which may be granted if the finding is made that the standard is unnecessary for traffic safety. As seen here in green, the 6-foot tall gate and fence in the rear parking area occupies this space. A 3-foot tall gate would not provide security for the rear parking area, and moving the gate would remove parking spaces. Staff believes that an administrative adjustment may be granted because the fence is open wrought iron and can be seen through. The low speeds of traffic in the alley increase reaction times with a condition of approval. And a condition of approval is included to require the applicant to install a watch for pedestrians sign on the interior of the fenced parking area, alerting drivers to potential dangers. A complete analysis is included in the staff report. The Design Review Committee was the deciding authority for design review and the administrative adjustments. On June 25th, the Design Review Committee denied the project, and the applicant subsequently appealed the committee's decision within the 10-day appeal period following the hearing. To approve the design review application, the review authority must find that the proposed development will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, or materially injurious to the properties or improvements in the vicinity, and the proposed project complies with all applicable design review criteria in the EMC, section 155.412.040.j, listed here, and are related to the surrounding context, pedestrian environment, architectural style, articulation and visual interest, materials, safety, and landscaping. the Design Review Committee denied the application on the grounds that the building's number of dwelling units and massing and scale failed to minimize the adverse impacts on neighboring properties when possible, citing Design Review Criteria number 1. This slide includes the full text of Design Review Criteria number 1, which reads, "The overall project and associated buildings enhance the design quality of the area where they are located and enhance Eureka's unique character and distinctive sense of place. New buildings may fit in with traditional architecture that complements the surrounding context or stand out with a contemporary and contrasting style. All buildings must minimize adverse impacts on neighboring properties when possible." The design review section of the code makes it clear that the review authority's focus is limited to the aesthetics of the street-facing facades of proposed developments. EMC section 155.412.I.3 states that the review authority may not require a modification to a project feature that complies with the mandatory development standards within the zoning code. Design review is intended to address only aesthetic character considerations not otherwise regulated by the zoning code. As previously noted earlier, the Design Review Committee found that the project was inconsistent with Design Review Criteria number 1, citing that the overall number of units and massing and scale of the development didn't minimize impacts on neighboring properties. However, the number of dwelling units, building scale and massing, setbacks, parking, all comply with the mandatory development standards of the zoning code and is therefore not subject to design review. The committee did not raise any aesthetic concerns related to the surrounding context, criteria number 1. And for these reasons, staff continues to find that the proposed development complies with all 7 design review criteria as outlined in the Design Review Committee staff report, attachment 2 of the packet. Based on the findings and analysis demonstrated within the staff report, staff believes that the proposed development may be approved with conditions. Therefore, staff's recommendation is to hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution finding the project is exempt from CEQA and reversing the Design Review Committee's denial and conditionally approving the project. I have a suggested motion when you're ready. The applicant, myself, and Deputy Director Castellano are here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for your presentation. I'll open it for questions for staff. I have one. I'll start. I did see this letter from Cal HDF, and I noticed a line that basically says the city must approve the project. And that only came in as of today. It looks like the 9th. That second paragraph, the city must approve the project unless it makes written findings regarding health and safety as mentioned above, which it cannot do.
I didn't realize we got 2 letters from HDF.
In regards to 2 different projects, that's correct.
Caitlin.
Yes, I read that letter and they are correct. There might have been some issue with whether the admin adjustment would have kicked it out of the Housing Accountability Act, but we believe that with the admin adjustment now it is in line with the zoning code. So correct, we shouldn't be denying it. And at the design review committee meeting, they were educated before about what their purview was, and they just were very uncomfortable with the zoning code in general. And when neighbors are, uncomfortable with projects that do conform with the zoning code. So it was yeah.
Well, you answered my second question, which is does the design review not have access to the zoning code? I just wondered if they did not, or maybe they don't understand it because they haven't spent as much time with it.
No, they do understand it. They're just uncomfortable with the higher density development that the 2040 general plan requires us to build with the higher density than before.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
The density, what was the previous density before the most recent plan?
It was a multifamily zone as well. I did look that up, but
I think Commissioner Lozar is asking, do we know how many units were there before it burned down?
One dwelling.
Oh, no, I got that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got that right. I'm looking at it right here. But as far as was there a substantial change in density under the most recent plan adoption?
I don't think so. I looked it up and it was a multifamily zone. Now, since the 50s, now it was kind of a strip of multifamily around the high school in the 50s, and then there was single family around that. But this property has been zoned multifamily since the 50s.
Okay. I guess because we've had a lot of discussion about parking, and parking can be pretty Byzantine, but I guess this meets the parking requirement, exceeds the parking requirements, and that's not based on any state level mandates. That's really just based on our own local standards, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't have any other questions at this time.
I have one super general question and one really specific one. Under our current bylaws, with 3 people making a quorum, what does a passing vote need to be?
2-1.
Okay, thank you for that. The specific question is I believe it's a wrought iron fence for the visual piece. Is that locked in?
That's what they proposed. So the code would allow a chain link fence, but they have proposed the wrought iron on their plans.
So when it comes to being able to see, making that adjustment, it's going to be safe.
Yeah, I mean, this was run by the public works director as well as the police chief, and I believe it was the police chief's recommendation to install the sign inside the parking area to say "Watch for pedestrians."
So if they opted for wood, they would just have to come down to 3 feet in that section.
Correct,
Okay.
or remove the fence altogether.
All right. As far as questions go for staff, that's all I have.
Sorry, I thought of one more. Is the paving of the alleyway mandatory, or is that something? Okay, so that's standard.
That was a condition for public improvements as part of the project.
Notice that it's not confined to the front edge of the alley. It goes all the way to the cross street. So, but that's not uncommon to require of a project to do off-site improvements.
Correct, I believe so. Especially with this number of dwelling units, it would defeat the purpose of just paving it right behind it.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on the code on this. I don't think there's a clear provision about paving beyond your parcel, but I think we look at the cost relative to the project cost and think about what's reasonable.
Well, I was glad to see it either way. I just wasn't sure if it was boilerplate, bare minimum, or above and beyond. So, thanks.
I'm sorry I misspoke. I actually do have one other question. In the letter that we got after 3 o'clock today from Mr. Bindles, one thing that he asked about did have some currency for me, which has to do with runoff of stormwater. Remind us of what the rules are with a new development and stormwater.
Yeah, so this is a regulated project, so it will need to submit a full stormwater construction and post-construction stormwater control plans. All the intention of a regulated project is all rain that falls on the property is supposed to stay on the property and be infiltrated there. And I believe also for the alley that it's going to have to be graded in a way that none of the stormwater is going to run off onto the neighboring properties. But
at least for the property itself, which seemed to be the intent of the letter.
Correct.
That's covered. Okay.
So the property incorporates permeable pavers at the rear parking area
All right.
to
Thank you.
infiltrate that water.
Okay. Looks like we don't have any further questions. We'll open it up for a public hearing. As a reminder, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and place of residence for the record. And also as a reminder, this is not a question and answer period. We will not be able to answer a question. So this is just a statement on your behalf.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Cumming. I live at 1833 H Street. uh, directly across the alley from the proposed development. I'm here to express my concern regarding the project, specifically safety, parking, and storm drainage. The proposed egress into the alley between H and I is the principal concern. Del Norte is designated a major collector, while H and I are principal arterial per the Eureka Traffic Division. The alley is one of the longest in Eureka at nearly a quarter of a mile, making alley traffic already high. This is due to the limited parking access on H&I, so service providers, shuttle buses, construction crews, utilities, trash collection all use the alley, plus residents, because they don't have any parking on H&I. Additionally, with the C&B mini market located on F Street, there are very high volumes of high school students trafficking on Del Norte across this alley, crossing H&I. Adding this additional traffic creates what is already a very unsafe environment. It makes it worse, driving these 7 to 10 vehicles a couple of times a day out of that alley. I don't know if any of you have any kids at Del Norte High School or at Eureka High School, but if you're crossing H or I, you're gunning it. And if you have a car popping out of the alley making a left turn, that's an accident. Add in the fact that there are pedestrians on both sides of the street, high school kids watching their phone. This is a very dangerous situation already. Approving this project just exasperates that. Additionally, parking is already very difficult. When you add the opening of Albee Stadium and the events that will bring in, the parking will become even more critical. I cannot park in front of my house on H Street. It is a red curb because of line of sight visibility. I have to park on Del Norte. So adding these additional units, and it's one house away from Del Norte, so it's very close. I have 30 more seconds. So it's very close to they will park on Del Norte. So I will be left with nowhere to park when I come home in the rain or what have you. I support additional housing. It's the density and the number of units and the alley egress that really makes it a safety concern. And I wish they'd made a plan to go out on I.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Cummings.
Hello, my name is Brad Curtis. I'm a fourth generation Eurekan, and I live at 1819 I Street. And I know we can't ask any questions and stuff of you, but I was just wondering, I didn't see any staff or any people come to check out the property or do anything like that, or inquire from us what a project this large would impact us in regards to that. I was wondering, with most of the buildings around here that are multi-family units, apartments and stuff like that, are duplexes and fourplexes. So this sevenplex is a step up in its size. I was thinking that an identical lot probably is the Squire project down at 10th and H. That's just such an eyesore. That would fit in perfectly with that. It's the same size. All those buildings down there are larger. Why isn't that being used instead of our area, which is already filled with traffic, filled with kids, and most of the buildings are just, like I said, the largest buildings that we have are duplexes and fourplexes. I understand the state has a mandate for increasing housing. I understand, but can't that be also taken care of by a duplex or a fourplex? A sevenplex with the bleed out of the cars is a nightmare. If anybody has ever taken a stroll at night down Del Norte or H or I, there's no parking. I go to Costco and I come back. I can't park in front of my house. I have to get a wheelbarrow, go up 2 blocks, grab my stuff, and bring it back to my house. It's a nightmare, and it's just something that that makes life there a real challenge. The neighborhood is predominantly single-family homes, predominantly. There's not. I bet you, if you went door to door and asked anybody in that neighborhood, 99.9% would say they don't want this large of a project. A duplex or a fourplex, sure, why not? We've got a state mandate, okay. That's not going to impact us so much. But that bleed out of cars, the impact on the alley, the impact on our lives is going to be horrendous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis.
Good evening. Just a quick thing before my time starts. I want to clarify on the staff report that it's 4 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom units and 3 1-bedroom, 1-bath units. I'm reading off the staff report here, so. All right. So good evening. My name is Joshua Oakes. I live at 1819 H Street in Eureka, which is directly behind the proposed project. I'm here to oppose the appeal of the Design Review Committee's denial of the proposed development at 1822 I Street. My primary concerns are parking, access, and the impact on surrounding properties, particularly privacy concerns from second-story balconies that directly overlook neighboring homes and yards. These issues fall squarely under Eureka Municipal Code Section 155.412.040.j, specifically Design Review Criterion 1, which requires new developments to, quote, complement the character of surrounding properties and, quote, minimize adverse impacts on neighboring sites. While the project meets criterion objective zoning standards, the code also in section 155.412.040.I.3 makes it clear that design review is intended to address aesthetic and contextual considerations beyond raw numbers, especially when they relate to massing, scale, and street-facing design. The bulk of this 2-story, 7-unit building with gated rear parking and prominent balconies is inconsistent with the character of nearby single-family and duplex homes. As stated in my previous argument, parking is also a major issue and concern. This project provides 8 off-street spaces, and while it does exceed the required parking by 1 space with the proposed exemption, it doesn't reflect the likely reality. In today's housing market, it is highly plausible that 1-bedroom units may house multiple adults, each with a vehicle. If 2 vehicles per unit are present, that's up to 14 cars, with at least 6 spilling onto the street. In a neighborhood already dealing with congested parking and high-speed traffic along I Street, this presents a clear public safety concern which must be considered under the code 155.412.040.j. Criterion 6, circulation and access, which emphasizes the need for safe vehicle and pedestrian movement. As for the administrative adjustments being requested, these do improve site layout, and I agree that denying the project because of them would weaken the design. However, approving them could set a precedent. As I said again in my previous arguments, this creates a slippery slope. If one project gets a pass, others will expect the same. This result could be gradual erosion of the very standards that the Design Commission is charged with upholding. Finally, I acknowledge that some issues raised by neighbors, including concerns about property values, neighborhood safety, and long-term community impacts, fall outside the formal scope of the Design Review Committee. As outlined in the Municipal Code 155.412.040.I.3. However, these concerns are real and deserve to be addressed. If this committee cannot act on them directly, I respectfully request that we be given an opportunity to speak to these issues in the appropriate venue where residents can raise these issues, whether that's through the City Council, the Planning Department, or future general plan updates. In closing, I just want to reiterate, I'm not opposed to multifamily housing. I support well-designed, context-sensitive infill, and a 4-unit or 4-plex at this location could meet housing goals without overwhelming the neighborhood. But the proposed 7-unit development, as designed, exceeds a reasonable scale for this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oates.
Hi, my name is Corinne Dare, 1820 I Street in Eureka, and I live directly north of the project in question. I previously wrote a letter, and I've been to the last meeting, so a lot of my concerns would be repetitive, but I do want to reiterate a few things. The massiveness of this building, especially built up 5 feet on both sides within the property limitations, would totally block off my light completely from the south. I would have nothing left with a 2-story building. Also, it would allow the windows in the upper story of both of the whatever units are going to be on top to look directly into my yard. It would totally limit my privacy. Also, the other thing that really bothers me is the property values in the neighborhood going down because of having this massive structure there. I mean, I've bought my house in '93 and I've worked my you-know-what off to pay for it. And 2 years ago, I finally paid off my piece of property. And now I'm going to have this massive structure next to me that's blocking out all the light, as well as other houses in the neighborhood will have. The one on the south side will have the same issue, as well as in the alley. It will be blocking the east light for some of the people. So anyway, those are my main concerns. The other is the alley is already a nightmare. It's got potholes and mud holes, and it's going to become a thoroughfare with that many more cars parking, especially parking back there. And I think it is going to be very dangerous. So that's really all I have to say.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for your time. My name is Edward Rochin. I live at 1807 I Street, block south from the proposed project. And I believe that it would be an eyesore and not complimentary of the neighborhood and the city of Eureka, especially in a high traffic area already. I think it's a disaster waiting to happen. I've been a property owner for 29 years and a lifelong resident for 56 years in this town. I just would think it'd be a bad idea. Maybe something smaller and more compliant would be beneficial for the neighborhood and the traffic situation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Brochin.
Hello, I'm Donna Roberts. I have a rental house 1 block to the west on H Street. So I do support the project in infill new housing. It does have a lot of nice elements. I do disagree with the vast amount of it. 7 units is too much. The alley access is too much. It's unpaved. It'd be like having your kitchen open to the parking lot down on C Street with all the dust coming around at dinner time. So there is a lot of unobservant high school students that do use the intersection. Your neighbors have spoken about being unable to park. So my opinion is that it's a potential wonderful addition, but not in the state, in the capacity, the number of units as it is.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts.
We have 1 person online.
Is there anyone else on site here that would like to speak? We'll move over to Zoom if not. Okay. Colin Fisk, I see your hand up.
Good evening. This is Colin Fisk with CRTP, the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities. You all know that we have an urgent need for more housing. And, just to put it bluntly, the options are to put that new housing out where there are currently forests and fields and wetlands, and in areas that require new residents to be able to drive to get anywhere, or to put them in our established communities in areas that give people more options and are closer to their neighbors and closer to work and school and services. And so, our belief, as well as I think, is consistent with the policies of the city and the state, is that we should be putting the new housing in those infill locations. This is a pretty good location. It's less than a mile from downtown. It has access to the existing public transit system in the city and the growing bike network in the city. It provides those transportation options. And really, as far as the scale of it, the fact is that it's consistent with the zoning code. We really don't have that many opportunities to provide new housing, and we shouldn't be, unnecessarily scaling back units that are built in appropriate places that have those access to those amenities. And I also want to address the safety issue briefly, which is to say that if the commission sees fit to address the visibility issues on the alley by either mandating a removal of the security fence or moving that fence backwards and removing a couple of parking spaces, we think that would be fine. But other than that, we really have no transportation safety concerns with the design, and would encourage you to move forward. And just to say finally, we are just deeply disappointed that the design review committee is continuing to put you in this position by forwarding these projects or denying these projects that are clearly consistent with the objective standards. And we hope that something can be done about this process so that we don't have to go through this every time there's a new proposal to build housing in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisk. Are those the only 5 we have on Zoom there? I'll give anyone in the audience one more opportunity before we close. Come on up, my dear.
Sorry, this is my first time here at City Council, and my name is May Pon, and I live on 1905 I Street. And so my concern is the parking space, because I live on corner of Irondale North, so parking space is an issue for me because one side I can park, but one side I have to get permit to park because it's in the school district area. So having this building being built, my concern is 2 things, is parking space and for the safety of Eureka High School kids. I have witnessed so many accident encounters. I've been in, I own my house there. I've lived there for about 20 years, and all my kids are grown up from there. So they're all graduate, and some of them are still with me. But that's my concern today, is to bring out that because of parking space and for the safety of the kids.
Thank you for being here and sharing.
Can I say one more thing?
I'm sorry, your time has lapsed. Okay, we'll close our public hearing and bring it back to the commissioners for discussion and a motion. You can bring that motion back up. I would just like to say this is your opportunity to be involved and to give your guys' feedback to the city. So I appreciate you guys being here and using your opportunity to give your feedback and your concerns. That is exactly how it works. You will have an opportunity, if this project goes through, to address the city council, and it does sound like some of these concerns probably should be brought to the council's attention. And our purview is really about zoning. So just keep that in mind, that there is another opportunity after this to bring concerns up with the city council, and I would encourage you to do so regardless of the outcome of this.
Could staff pull up the zoning and land use maps for this area and maybe try to put a cursor on where the project's located? I have them here, but nobody's going to see what I see.
Derek, I'm having trouble getting out of this presentation. Oh, there we go. Okay. let me find my Eureka High School. Here's Del Norte. And Del Norte and between H and I, or is it this one right here? Yep, that's it. So I'm putting my cursor on it.
Thanks. I think it's helpful just for folks, just to recognize the reality from a land use planning standpoint. When I bought my house in Eureka, over 15 years ago, I looked at the neighborhood in which it was located and said, oh, wow, it's multifamily, but it's all single family homes. So, okay, I guess that means that if there were vacant lots or something were to be removed, it could be redeveloped. So I think you have to understand that from a planning standpoint, this is the plan. And it's been the plan not for just a couple of years, but for quite a few years, I believe. And it's one thing to be planned for that, but the reality is most of this is built out. And a lot of it's built out with single family homes, but some of those homes were large enough that they've been converted to multifamily residences. I think we all have seen that. So in this case, there was a 2-story or 1.5-story Greek Revival house that burned down quite a few years ago. And now we're looking at a development that's quite a bit denser than what was there previously. But it's absolutely consistent with the plan for this area. And the opportunity emerged when the home was destroyed. So I guess it's just from my standpoint, if you put yourself in the shoes of the applicant, they're pursuing a project that meets the goals of the plan. They're trying to do it in a way that's sensitive. And that's my characterization of what they're doing. But I think it is sensitive in a lot of ways because there are similarly mass structures in the neighborhood to this that are just single family homes, not multifamily. So I think from how does it fit in the general character, it generally fits. Having said that, it's flanked by 2 modest cottages on both sides, and I'm sensitive to that, but that is a kind of a tension point because those cottages are underbuilt for what the plan is. So there's sort of how do we transition to a new use of the site? I would say the only thing from my standpoint, I'm prepared to support the project. I'm glad that they're doing paving of the alley. I think that's absolutely non-negotiable given they're going to be adding traffic to that. I rode my bike here today, rode right by this. It's right on the I Street corridor. It's one of the most ideal locations, as Mr. Fisk mentioned, for someone to be able to get on a bicycle and get somewhere in the city. I also think, just my forecasting, that if we were having this discussion 5 years from now, we wouldn't even be able to require any parking because I see that's where it's headed at the state level. So this project exceeds the current standards of our code and will likely be 5 times more the parking requirements of the future. So I know that's not comforting for folks that are seeing this kind of emerge, but that is the trend that I see coming when it comes to infill development. So it's a tough spot we find ourselves, but I do think it meets the prescriptive standards of the code. And for that reason, I'm comfortable making a motion to support it. I would say, and I'd be interested in see whether the commissioners are interested in this, the upper story windows and fenestration, to the extent that they could be maybe confined to higher levels than what would be visible, that would allow light to pass through, but not necessarily be, a view corridor into the neighboring homes. I don't know if that's really feasible. I haven't evaluated the floor plans, and I don't know if that's something that's been discussed with the applicant, but that could be a way to kind of try to address some of the localized issues that come with putting a 2-story home that is a fairly large footprint compared to what historically was there on a site that has modest 1-story development with yards that could be. But I can say that on the north end, I think we heard public comment from Mrs. Yeah, on the north end, there's vegetation that largely obscures the yard. So to me, they kind of have a protection to some extent for privacy. But beyond that, those are the only things that I thought about trying to do. And I would ask has that kind of discussion been made with the applicant about trying to confine the second floor windows to just maybe outside of where they'd be viewable from the.
There was a screen that showed the side view of the building. You could bring that back
you can bring up those elevations.
Yeah, and we have not had any conversations with the applicant regarding fenestration.
It gets complicated because of building code requirements for egress windows in bedrooms.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not an expert on it.
That was a concern I had as well. I think it'd be the slide on the bottom, right? That's the north, well, both sides basically. But yeah, you can see how on the north and south sides of the building, maybe the smaller windows are bathroom windows is my guess, and those could be just, perhaps. But I don't want to presume anything. That's about it though, as far as I could tell. And as I said, the home that was there wasn't quite as tall, but it wasn't a single story home. It was.
Sir, you're out of
excuse
order.
me. Yeah, please. But I just want to point that out. That the site is being redeveloped. It's not a vacant lot in the sense that it has historically. Yeah.
Sir,
So
it's just not appropriate. Thank you.
So I didn't see a lot of opportunity to really tweak much about the design. Those are the only things I could think of. And maybe you could achieve the egress goal by having opaque windows that are not, you wouldn't be able to see out of, but you would be able to get out of. That might be a solution that could help address some of the privacy issues. But I don't know if we really should do that for a project of this sort.
The applicant's architect is here.
So yeah, I'm prepared to make a motion if the commissioners don't have any other discussion.
Well, we can discuss after second or now. I do have a little bit. I have kind of deeply mixed feelings about objective versus subjective standards and the extent to which objective standards are legislated. But they are, and I don't see us having good legal foundation for doing anything other than reversing the design committee's decision here. I'll look to Attorney Black to see if he wants to argue with me on any of that. There was some reference in Mr. Oates' public comment about his interpretation of the zoning code, and with respect to safety and other related issues. I still think that, Eureka is not a place that chooses to thumb its nose at state law. There are jurisdictions that do that, some big and wealthy and far away, and some small and poorer and very close by. But, our city council and legal advice, city staff tend to go with what state regulations are. And so if we had subjective criteria, and this was appealed, I might well vote to uphold the denial. But in my mind, we really don't. And so I'm ready to support the project as well.
I also noted when I visited the site today that some of the folks that provided testimony, including Mr. Oakes and Mr. Curtis, on their alley frontages, they have buildings that flank the alley that are absolutely not, that are not opaque or whatever. They go right up to. Excuse me,
Sir.
Please. It's not a back and forth, but I'm just saying, like, across the alley is things that are not compliant, like literally across the alley. So this would be an improvement over that as well, and it's a modest exception to try to provide the parking that is such a bone of contention for this project.
As far as adding conditions, I at most would support a recommendation on the window opaqueness issue. But I think the applicant has colored within the box.
Yeah, I agree that many of the safety concerns don't have necessarily anything to do with this project, but it sounds like the high school could use some safety meetings there about how to properly cross the street and pay attention. That sounds pretty scary to live in the neighborhood like that, but again, that is not within our purview. Do either of you want to hear from the applicant? A question?
Maybe we could just ask about if there's any opportunities for the fenestration to be modified to address some of those.
If the applicant would be willing to answer a question, we would ask you to come forward.
Hi there, I'm Donald Gleek. I designed the building.
Did you hear my question about the,
Yeah,
the privacy?
I mean, I think it's definitely a possibility. I know that I've seen a lot of newer apartment complexes being built, and a lot of the tenants elect to actually put an obscure film over the window for similar reasons. So, I mean, I certainly think that would help with the feeling of privacy. But I also, there's vegetation, there's other ways of screening that wouldn't be necessarily establishing some kind of precedent requiring people to have obscure second floor windows. So, I think most of the two-story buildings in the neighborhood don't have that condition currently. So, I mean, I think it's something we'd be agreeable to if it gets our project approved, but doesn't necessarily seem totally appropriate. So, and it's not within the purview of the design review, which was the street-facing facade. So, I don't even, I'm happy to engage in any conversation. We did put a lot of thought into this design, and we did consider a lot of other things before we put this one forward. But yeah, I think if we could get it approved without it, that'd be my preference.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Okay.
So Commissioner Lazar, what are you thinking about the window thing?
Yeah, I really don't have the appetite to require it or even suggest it, frankly. I think there are ways that tenants, as Mr. Cleek testified, can address that issue on their own without modifying. And there's too much fenestration to make it practical, so it's going to be a massive change to the visibility of both upper story units. So I just don't see that being a practical way. And I think I would much rather see the design we have here where it has visual interest from the street and better matches some of the massing of buildings in the vicinity than a design that minimizes fenestration on the second floor. I think we got the better of the two, though I'm sensitive to the concerns of people who flank the development on either side. But the reality is you could build a two-story house with all of the same fenestration, the same exact footprint on this lot, and it wouldn't have a problem from a code standpoint, except for the fact that that's not what it's planned for. So, yeah.
All right. Well, in that case, I'm prepared to make the motion if you want to bring it up.
There you go.
I move the Planning Commission adopt a resolution finding the project exempt from CEQA and reversing the Design Review Committee's denial of the project and conditionally approving the Leach multifamily residential development at 1822 I Street.
And I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. As a reminder, you would have the opportunity to address the council.
Just to clarify, there's a 10-day appeal period now where anybody can, who participated, can appeal this to the city council. There's an appeal fee, and you submit your appeal application to the city clerk. No, it's a different fee for city council. I feel like it's around $600. And that's because we have to notice the hearing before the city council and send postcards to all the neighbors.
But as a reminder, they do have representation via their city council person that they certainly could reach out to in the meantime, I would assume.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay. We'll move to F3, accessory dwelling unit, and SB 9 inland zoning code update.
Thanks a lot, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
I'm going to let you work. I'm going to let you do this, Derek. Sorry. Okay, our last public hearing tonight is actually about the rules.
Yeah.
This is the time to definitely give your input about the rules because, yeah, that's where we have the... Okay. So, this is the city proposes to amend the inland zoning code, which applies to the portion of the city that's outside or inland of the coastal zone. And the amendment is just focused on our accessory dwelling unit section 155316, our residential zoning district standard section, and our urban lot split subdivision section. But before I speak more about the regulatory changes, I just want to take a moment to define some terms. An accessory dwelling unit, or ADU, is a complete residence with permanent provisions for sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. ADUs, by definition, are accessory to one or more primary dwelling units on the same lot. They can be accessory to a single family dwelling or to a multifamily dwelling. They have a maximum size of 1,200 square feet, and like any other residence in Eureka, they must be at least 150 square feet in size. As shown in the graphic on the side, ADUs come in many different forms. They can be attached to the primary residence or detached standalone structures, and they can be new construction, or they can be created through the conversion of existing space, like an existing garage or second story. Junior ADU is a type of ADU that is 500 square feet or less in size and contained entirely within an existing or proposed single-family residence. This includes the conversion of an attached garage. Senate Bill 9 went into effect January 1st, 2023, and requires cities to allow 2 attached or detached primary dwelling units on any lot zoned for single-family use. This essentially means the city needs to allow at least a duplex on each lot zoned for single-family use, in addition to accessory dwelling units. SB 9 also amended the Subdivision Map Act to require cities to administratively approve the splitting of lots in single-family zones in urban areas to create 2 lots of relatively equal size, as small as 1,200 square feet in size. The current minimum lot size in the R1 zone, our single-family zone, is 5,000 square feet. So this is a significant new allowance. However, there's this caveat that the property owner must occupy one of the housing units on site as their principal residence for a minimum of 3 years after approval of the lot split. So it's set up so that a developer can't speculatively use this to split a bunch of lots into smaller lots. It's a tool for an individual property owner to use. And while ADUs are allowed anywhere on lots with primary residences, so any single, multi, or mixed-use zoning district where residences are allowed, SB 9 only applies to the R1 zoning district. So the city last updated its ADU regulations in October 2023, and there have been major updates to state ADU law since then, prompting the state to email us in May of this year saying our regulations are null and void unless we update them consistent with current state law. And then amendments to the ADU regulations required a little change to our residential zoning standards, which prompted us to make some other code updates that are non-substantive, like fixing the order of the numbering of the footnotes and condensing the tables and adding better titles and stuff. And then it also made us reread SB 9. We previously incorporated SB 9 the same year it passed, but we missed a bunch of stuff that we think was important for people to know about. So we added more of SB 9 into our zoning code. We took this opportunity to do that. Sorry, I just said all that. Okay, so what are the major changes to state ADU law that we are incorporating into this update? First of all, state law now requires the city to allow up to 8 detached ADUs with an existing multifamily dwelling, as long as the number of ADUs does not exceed the number of existing primary units. So it used to be you get 2 detached ADUs with an existing or proposed multifamily dwelling. Now, if you have an existing multifamily dwelling that's 8 units, you can get 8 detached ADUs. And they have to be detached from your primary structure, but they can be attached to each other. Also, state ADU law now says local governments cannot require the replacement of covered or uncovered parking lots to make room for an ADU. Previously, there was only a prohibition on requiring replacement of covered parking. and state ADU law now has extremely lenient amnesty provisions for unpermitted ADUs constructed before January 1st, 2020. If someone with an illegal ADU comes in to get the necessary building permit to legalize the unit, the city must approve the unit, even if it isn't consistent with the city's zoning and building standards, as long as the building official does not deem the unit substandard pursuant to Health and Safety Code 17920.3. And we have a sheet up on our website that lists all the things that are necessary to be compliant with that code section, which is basically that your house isn't going to burn down because it's poorly wired, or it's pretty basic stuff. And then the last thing is that state ADU law now allows primary dwelling units and ADUs to be sold separately as condominiums. Unlike the other provisions I just discussed, this condo provision is optional, and staff is recommending we include it, since council is really pro getting more owner occupied housing. So Commissioner Kraft asked me to also highlight what are some stuff that we're doing that's more lenient than state law. One thing we already have is that state law says you have to process a building permit for an ADU in 60 days. We do it in 45, and we got points towards our pro housing designation for that. New things that are proposed with this update. State law says if you have an existing structure like a shed and you're gonna repurpose it or build in the same location to the same dimensions, you can, even if it's non-conforming with setbacks. We say it doesn't have to be exactly the same dimensions, provided the new structure does not make the non-conforming setback worse. State ADU law, in terms of maximum size, they have a lot of different provisions, but in certain cases, you can impose a maximum size limitation of 800 or 850 square feet, 1,000 if it's one bedroom, and then there's all these caveats. And so we just wanted instead to have a 1,200 square foot maximum for all ADUs. And then the state law also has all these provisions about how and when you can set height limits that are different for ADUs, but we just have the same height limit as the primary residence. State law says, so there's a provision in state law. This is where it gets to the point where we need 2 ADUs. You need to allow at least 2 ADUs plus a junior ADU on any single family lot. They don't just say 2 ADUs. They're specific about which ADUs. So one is 1 ADU within the proposed space of a single family dwelling or existing space of a single family dwelling or accessory structure, and 1 detached new construction ADU. And we are proposing instead to just say you get 2 ADUs. It doesn't matter if they're attached or detached, new or conversion. This just simplifies administration, and it just seems like unnecessarily complicated how it is, and hard to explain to people. So how many units do you get total on a single family in a single family zone? State law says you get up to 4 units on a single family zone lot. And so you can get a second attached or detached primary, up to 2 detached ADUs and 1 junior ADU. So, but out of those, how many options is that? The primary, the second primary, the 2 ADUs, and the junior ADU. Out of those 5, you get 4 of those. So it could look like this, it could look like this, and it could look like this. And then if you use that urban lot split provision to go to a smaller lot, state SB 9 law says that you get 2 units on each resulting lot, but we allow 3. And that was also in our pro housing application and has been in our code for a few years now. We allow at least, we allow the primary plus a second primary or an ADU and a junior ADU. So Planning Commission's role in this legislative change is to make a recommendation to City Council, and then City Council will hold a public hearing and vote whether they want to introduce the ordinance, tentatively scheduled for August 5th. And then if that happens, then there'll be a vote on adoption, tentatively August 19th. And the required findings are that the amendments are consistent with the general plan, internally consistent with the rest of the code, and not detrimental to the public interest, health, safety, convenience, or welfare. The notice of the hearing was, because it applies all throughout the inland area, we were able to just do a newspaper notice, and then we also put it on the website and bulletin boards. There are specific provisions in state law that say if you're updating your regulations to be compliant with state ADU law and SB 9, then you don't have to do CEQA. Also, the rest of the updates are really not anything that would have the potential to have a significant impact on the environment. So we also believe this qualifies for a common sense exemption. We received a letter today from the California Housing Defense Fund saying that for certain types of ADUs, certain categories of ADUs included in Government Code 66323, we cannot impose any maximum unit size, any minimum front setbacks, or historic preservation review. And we looked at that and we thought that that is accurate. And so we also sent you an addendum to the staff report today with proposed changes, which basically add this 66323 unit exemption to address those issues. And in the addendum, I have all these proposed changes. And so we propose that we recommend that Planning Commission adopt a resolution recommending City Council adopt the proposed update with the changes proposed by the addendum.
Okay, thank you for that. Questions?
I'll start. So first, Director Kenyon, thank you so much for the leniency beyond the state explanations. You answered a question that was a little more intelligent than the question I asked or meant to ask. So in this update, carving out what is required to comply with state law and the internal cleanup kinds of stuff, are there optional things that we're putting into this update that you didn't cover in some way in this presentation?
I don't think so.
Okay. I just meant, so my question was intended to be, what are we passing tonight that is not a cleanup or state-driven thing?
Just the non-substantive stuff about like renumbering footnotes and going from 3 tables
Beautiful.
to 2.
That was great information, so I'm glad I communicated poorly, but I actually meant to ask a simpler question. Can you give us the AI summary version of what that code 66323 is generally about?
It starts with the word notwithstanding. So the rest of the state law, it's like you can have these objective standards that apply to ADUs that cover things like front setbacks and, and then there's this, it's basically the caveat override section that says if you're one of these 4 types of ADUs, then you get approved by right and the city can't impose any sort of standards other than what's included in the section. And there's nothing really included in that section standard wise.
Okay. And what are the 4 types?
In the addendum, I included that section. Let me open it. One of them is like so there's a junior ADU. There's an ADU that's within the existing space of a single family residence or accessory structure. You can increase it in size by 150 square feet, but you have to shove it into an existing space. And then the second type is a detached ADU that's 800 square feet or smaller. And then the third type is fitting additional ADUs into an existing multifamily residence in areas that aren't being used as habitable space. So if you have a locker room, you turn it into a ADU. And then the fourth one are the 8 detached ADUs. And previously, the state, until 2 days ago, or whatever that big sequel bill passed, it said for that type you could impose some additional objective standards, and that was taken out just a few days ago.
Okay. All right. So my last question that I have right now is, are you satisfied that you covered the stuff HDF raised?
We'll see. Hopefully they give me a call this time. I appreciated their legal feedback, but I could have done it more thoroughly if I was given more than an hour to.
Yeah. Well, impressive work given the turnaround. Thank you.
You did mention that the property owner would have to be on site, and how it would the city be making sure that they're compliant?
Yeah, that's for the if you want to do that subdivision of your single family lot into 2 tiny lots, you have to sign an affidavit saying that you're going to live on site for 3 years, and then it's like it's one of those tricky ones where how do you enforce that code wise? It would be quite a sleuth operation to figure out if that's your primary residence.
Complaint driven, I guess, right? If the neighbors complained. So basically R1s now can have 4 dwelling units.
Yeah, it's actually with the provision that you can go down to 1,200 square feet. It's and the 4 dwelling units. In some cases, you can build more on an R1 lot now than you can on an R2 or R3, because our
But you're saying we can't change that.
Right.
Okay.
This is state law driven because ADUs. So this, David Loya, the planning director for Arcata, he was talking about this the other day, how the state just keeps throwing pasta at a wall to see what sticks with removing regulations. And this is a piece of pasta that's stuck. ADUs is one of the only success stories in California in terms of getting more housing built in recent years.
So to Mr. Fisk's point earlier, how will this come down with design review so we don't start to see us having to re-review things that like this new law that you have a neighborhood having issues with now for accessory or dwelling units?
All of these units we have to approve administratively with a building permit. There's no notice to the neighbors. There's no hearing. They'll just see it getting built, and there's nothing we can do about it. We have no discretionary say.
Great. I mean, not great, but great.
I think the SB9, or actually I guess the ADU, where we're saying you can go up to 1,200 for all of them, that's where we're being more generous. We're kind of deviating from the just porting over the state stuff, right? That's one example, right?
Right, except that letter then said that we can't impose that 1,200 square foot max on those particular types of units. So then I had to add an exemption to that 1,200 square feet provision.
Okay. Yeah.
The state ADU law, is written by overtime, and it keeps getting edited by different, the legislature, and it's just very convoluted at this point. The state gave me a model ordinance, and they were like, "Here, you could just adopt this," and it had all these contradictory sections in it, and I'm like, this will totally frustrate and anger people and will not get more ADUs built. So I'm trying to keep the regulations as simple as possible for people within the confines of this really complex law with all these random caveats and different provisions in it.
Yeah, it almost seems like, to do a local ADU regulation is like an extravagance. The state kind of just wants you to get out of the way and just accept what they've adopted and stop trying to even try to put your fingerprints on a local version. Because at the pace they do it, it puts staff in this terrible position year after year of having to bring back updates to the code that match the new mandates that come down from Sacramento. And
Except we need ours because we have these provisions that are more lenient than state law.
Right.
And that gets us our pro-housing designation, which then gets us money.
Yeah, bless your heart. I mean, it's a lot. I was like, I'm sure the county has received a letter just like the one the city got about those ADU rules. I don't think we've done our update yet.
I'll just pile onto that to say, apart from the pro-housing aspect of it, I liked every one of those leniency pieces you put in.
Oh, any further discussion? Questions for
just
staff?
as someone, I mean, I've worked in planning now for 20 something years, and I can say that it does make a difference. These tweaks, not all of them. Some of it is pasta against the wall, but when I started my career, it was not uncommon. Someone would come in and say, "I want to build a mother-in-law unit." We go, "Oh, what's your density?" "Oh, okay. Well, sorry, you don't qualify because you need at least an acre per unit or something like that." And they go, "Okay, well," or they go. And then they remove the density restriction, waive the density, and then, "Oh, well, you don't have enough parking. You need 3 spaces. Oh, well, I can't put those. I don't have any. I'd have to get rid of my front lawn. Oh, you don't need a parking space now if you're within a quarter mile of a bus stop. Period. That's why I say the parking for the project we approved tonight is amazing, frankly. But yeah, it's just every little thing. Oh, it doesn't meet the setback. Well, it doesn't have to meet setbacks. Oh, it's an existing shed. Now it can be on 80. It's just anything that would possibly provide the pathway. The state is just targeting those refinements, and it is making a difference. A lot more things are being built. So all for the good as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Well, I'll open it up for a public hearing. And then it looks like Mr. Fisk on Zoom would like to speak. I don't think I need to remind him of the 3-minute.
Hello again. Yeah, I just wanted to very briefly say, I think we're going to need several different kinds of infill development to meet our housing and climate and safety goals. And that includes both some of that more intense multifamily construction, but also what's sometimes called, gentle density or this ADU kind of infill. And so I appreciate the city's efforts to date and including this evening to encourage that, and also just really want to commend Director Kenyon and her staff on, staying on top of all of the constantly changing complexities of state law in this regard and making sure that the city is not only compliant with the letter, but also the spirit of the law and encouraging good, solid infill housing production. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any more hands raised. So I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commissioners for motion and any further discussion or amendments. But I don't think we can make any.
No, I'm prepared to make a motion when we're ready. Okay, so I move the planning commission adopt a resolution recommending the city council adopt the proposed ADU and SB9 inland zoning code update, along with the changes proposed by the addendum we received tonight.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Really good work.
Thank you.
Could you send me that PowerPoint?
Sure. Looks like no old business or new business. The staff report and communication is a reminder to respond to the email.
Correct. We haven't had an issue with this commission, but we've had to cancel a few meetings recently and others. So we're doing a blanket reminder to everybody, if you know you can't attend, or that if you are going to have to recuse yourself from an item, respond back to the email as soon as you can so we can make sure we have a quorum.
Okay. That would bring the end adjourned. No?
Actually, if I could take 30 seconds
Take it
under
back.
item J, just a quick one that Director Kenyon and I will be attending the Eureka's Economic Development Commission next week to talk about the fishing thing, and hopefully we'll get a nominee to the group from that body.
Now we're adjourned.